Sometimes life is yikes.
And that's okay. You're not alone. Welcome to Yikesland. Hi, guys, and welcome to Yikesland, episode 27.
27.
Yeah,
I think I did
kinda.
it right. That's fine.
This episode is now more podcasts. This podcast is now more episodes old than I am. I did that backwards. Might be. So that's exciting. That's a good thing.
It's getting better.
I am your host, Chris Fung, along with my co-host.
It's Jelani Hoon.
And we are happy to be here with you on another Tuesday, another great Tuesday, because you are here with us in the world, existing, maybe listening, maybe watching, but regardless, just there. Maybe in your bed, maybe under a blanket, maybe having a good day, maybe eating cookies.
Maybe.
I don't know. I hope it's a good day, but sometimes it's not, and that's okay. But regardless, you are present and existing in the world with us, and so we are happy about that.
Yes. We
would love to hear from you guys. We're on Twitter and Facebook. You can find us on Instagram at Yikesland_podcast or email us at yikesland@gmail.com. Slide into our DMs. I messed it up.
Right.
Drop us a DM.
That's right.
I don't know. Do something cool and modern. Some emojis, a GIF or a GIF, depending on
your accent.
Yeah, what side of the pineapple on pizza battle you
That's
fall
right.
on.
That's how you do it.
Now it seems like we're a podcast of very old people trying to be like, hello, fellow kids, because of how many lame jokes I just made. Okay, I'm going to start this podcast off a normal way, talking about normal things by asking Jelani, how are you?
Well, thank you. Thank you for that question.
Terrible intro and then a normal question. Yes.
It's totally fine. So how am I doing? I've, as you guys know, in the past couple episodes, things have been a little rough on Jelani's side here, but recently I've been doing some things, being more proactive. I had some surprise family visits and things like that. So it's been actually pretty positive lately. So I think that things are getting better. I don't necessarily have a dark outlook right now. So, I mean, everything's looking pretty good. I've been doing a lot of things. I've been going for walks, like those.
Walks are good.
Those certain walks that you take when you're like, I'm going to put some music on and I'm just going to walk. You know what I mean? And I'm just going to look in the distance,
I don't know what you mean. But maybe you guys do. Let us know if you do know what Jelani's talking about.
You don't know what I mean.
I mean, I'm picturing what you're saying, but no, I don't know that I've ever done that.
It's one of those, I'm just going to take one of those walks around town with music.
Are you going in you're going in no direction?
I'm just kind of just walking, just going.
Might end up anywhere?
I might.
Walk in
I don't know where I'll go.
In the neighborhood?
Maybe circles.
Familiar, unfamiliar territory?
Familiar, unfamiliar. Who knows?
Could go anywhere.
Could go anywhere.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
Sure.
But the major points of it are I'm walking, I'm listening to music, and I'm just looking off. I'm pondering.
Do you like to walk around other people, through busier neighborhoods, or
you like
alone?
movies, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you seen rom-coms and stuff like that, or romantic movies, right?
When you take a walk,
and so there's those scenes
where you guys have broken up.
Yeah, it's either that or I gotta think about things, and they just end up cutting a montage of the person walking around town, looking at different monuments, things like that. I don't go to the monuments. But I mean,
well, that's what I was asking. Is I guess I could picture. I would go for a walk in a city, but I wouldn't go for a walk in the suburbs unless I'd run with music, or I would walk with a walking partner or a dog.
Luckily,
so I was
around
just
here,
trying to narrow down what the walking MO is.
Luckily, around here by where I live, there's a bunch of trails.
It's a nature walk.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not walking by people's houses and staring in the windows or something like that, if that's what you're wondering. But yeah, I guess I'm walking just the normal trails or things like that. I've been walking to this single bench that I know where it's just some random bench that's sitting by the lake. And I was
Favorite
okay,
bench?
I'm just going to walk over there and sit up there and take a look.
Sure. Yeah.
You seem so weirded out by this.
No, I was just trying to kind of like pin down like what feels good about the walk, because like being around nature does feel good. So like I get
guess
that, or being around a bunch of people but feeling alone in a sea of people sometimes can be nice. If you're in a coffee shop,
sure.
Coffee shop.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I do
yeah.
frequent a coffee shop a lot,
Yeah.
but I guess maybe it's kind of like the opposite of what we've been talking about with social anxiety, where it's I'm trying to decompress from everything that is like hustle bustle of like going to cons, going to meet a crowd of people, going to a crowded place, because eventually that gets to be just like, exhausting to do. And I guess it's more of a decompression of like I am in a bubble, but I'm not confining myself to my safe zone of like I'm just gonna lay on my couch and turn off all the lights and close all the blinds and just act like a cave person. There's that.
Okay. Yeah. No, it
Makes
sounds
sense?
nice. And I mean, obviously, I don't have to understand, like, it's not like your method of chill is.
It's the
bad
chill mode. It's just kind of just like I'm gonna take a walk.
Because I didn't understand it. It's more like I was like curious and I wanted to
I guess it's more akin to like I'm gonna take a drive, right?
Sure.
Take a drive.
Okay.
I'm blasting my music or whatever, and I'm just gonna drive.
I've
right?
also not really done that, but
you've wanted
I'm familiar about the trope, and I will take a drive. I will be like talking on the phone in my car, like on the Bluetooth, and like keep driving because I keep wanting to have the conversation, but while driving, like in the country instead of.
So
obviously you can have a phone conversation at home too, but like.
Yeah, but it's just kind of just like you do
I
that thing
wonder.
where you kind of like you keep fidgeting and you kind of like.
I think it's probably like a concentration / attention issue that I can't do that stuff without having a phone conversation. Because I'll walk if I'm having a phone conversation. I'll walk for like 3 hours on the phone. But like, what you're saying sounds nice. I think to me, the thing that was so strange is that I wouldn't be able to do that without having some other distraction, like being on my phone, having a phone conversation, having someone with me, having a dog with me, whatever. So I think this is the crux of where I was like, what do you mean you just walk?
And so like if I take it to another layer, right? If I go to another layer. So the reason why I play music, right? And so like one of the things that my brain does when I play music is I empathize with what's going on in the song, right?
Okay.
Not the lyrics necessarily, but the mood that it gives me, right? Yeah. I actually don't really remember the lyrics very often unless it's like a chorus where it's like constantly played to the song. I don't remember many lyrics unless they really stand out to me. Mostly what I like to do when I take the walks, I normally listen to songs that don't have lyrics. I actually listen to orchestra pieces or soundtracks to movies that I've enjoyed, and I will through that. And for some reason, like my mind does all this creative stuff in my mind where it kind of maybe that's what I do it for. Maybe like it shakes things loose where I need the shot to like my creative like juices in my mind. And so like I'll play themes or I'll play songs that don't have any lyrics, set a mood in my mind, and all of a sudden I just let my mind go. And that's why I'm like I'm not paying attention to really a lot what's going on, because like if I've ever been walking and I've just like not noticed you or something like that, I'm sorry, forgive me. I'm zoned out. Like what I'm doing is I'm looking at probably just like the horizon, looking at the sky, looking around, like focusing and just like letting my mind go off into wherever it goes. Start thinking about like sometimes certain upbeat songs will start making me think of like creative like aspects where I kind of like build like scenes in my head of like oh, there's this person and they're happy and they're doing this, and I kind of, it's almost like creative writing, but I don't write anything down. I actually never have, which actually I should be doing, but whatever. But I kind of just let it go, and I end up just like creating different scenes in my head or things in my head that kind of are more of like feeding a creative like mindset that I have. Sometimes I'll think about like if I'm thinking to if I'm listening to like a sorrowful piece, right, where it's like very sad or something like that, I'll be walking and I'll start thinking about like what fits that. Like if I was
But Is it a thing where, because you know how sometimes listening to sad music is enjoyable, like you
Yeah.
enjoy the sad.
Yes.
Is it a thing where you're enjoying that sorrow then?
Yeah, sure. And I can do that. You know, and that's the thing where like it's almost as if I was creating a movie backwards. You know, where I was if I was like I'm trying to break it down to like what I know. So I know movies, right? And I know that they shoot scenes first and then someone scores music to those scenes,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
And it's almost as if I was walking around out of my bubble. Don't want to be because if I'm confined into my place, like my mind will start going to different things. And I'm not like I can't for some reason I can't really like put my headphones on in my own place. It doesn't like get me like
Yeah.
there. I go into just like I don't want to do anything. I'm just gonna lay down. I'm gonna start like going all over the place. But when I'm walking and I'm out in the world and I guess I do the nature thing too, sure. But if I just walk, I will almost play a song and kind of create a scene around that song, right? So like I'm almost shooting a scene to the music instead of in my mind, right? And it sounds really weird, but I guess that's something that I do.
I think it sounds really nice. I enjoy knowing the intricacies of it, and so that's why I asked too many questions.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Like let me ask you this, because do you still run?
Yeah, I haven't been doing as good of training as I was before, but that's why I brought up, because I would run and listen to music, and then you can't really be doing anything else like texting or whatever because you're like
You're like
jostling
too much. You'll
Yeah.
drop the phone.
So
like
that's why
comic.
I thought that the walking was like maybe not quite enough. Like I need at least 2 inputs at a time, like 2 strong things going on. I guess like in order for me not to be I get really antsy and really like sort of stressed out to the core if there's not enough stuff going on, like I'm not being stimulated enough. So I need at least 2 inputs. And so for running, the inputs are music, but I listen to the music too loud in a way that probably hurts my ears.
Yeah, I do that too.
And then the tiredness of running or like the physical exertion.
So let me ask you this: when you run, where's Chris's mind? What's happening in Chris's mind? Is it do you black out like during the whole run? Is it doing something? Is it what is the gain out of the run when you run with the music?
Well, I think that it's one of the few things that allows me to relax a little bit or zone out a little bit, where it's not like I'm not still thinking stuff, but because like, you know, you kind of like either you're tired and out of breath or you're in the period of the runner's high. And so there's kind of enough stuff going on that then my brain isn't so frantic, where normally I have a lot of thoughts going on all at once. And so running allows me to not have that much stuff going on and chill out a little bit more. But it's not like a full like meditation situation where I'm not thinking about anything. And so I guess that's what like I asked you so many questions, but it reflects on me more than it reflects on you, that like it seems bad to me now that I wouldn't be able to walk and listen to music because I would have too much stuff going on in my brain then, and I'd be like stressed out or like want to be texting or just be like picking at myself or something.
No, yeah, I understand that.
I can't calm down enough.
And that's the thing. Like, I think I do that more when I don't freeform like that, I guess. Like, when I'm not, like, going off and just doing, like, a thing where it just, like, lets my just mind flow on a more different level than what it normally does. Because if I'm sitting somewhere or, like, in a place where I'm, like, if I'm here, at home or something like that, and I begin to just... I'm here by myself. I'm just thinking. My mind gets all like just stressed out and everything like that. I'm like fidgeting. I'm grabbing my phone, constantly scrolling through things, even though I scroll through the same scroll like hundreds of times. And it's almost like I can't, like I get antsy or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't. Like I gotta.
People
move.
always critique like people scrolling their phones too much, and the thing is, I don't think. Sometimes your phone or like the concept of Facebook or having something to scroll through endlessly can sort of be like you feeding the monster, I guess, a little bit. So like I do understand that argument where like if you're prone to doing that, you might start scrolling, and then because you have stuff to scroll through, you accidentally can't stop, and then you've wasted many hours. But like for me, I also kind of think that's a dumb thing to criticize, because my brain is gonna do the equivalent of scrolling when it wants to, no matter what. And obviously before like smartphones existed, I would do that, but with switching what, like I'd be reading like 4 books at once, or switching what task I was doing a whole bunch, where I'd start cleaning one thing, then clean another thing, then clean another thing, then clean another thing. Or even when I was a kid, like be playing a game with my sister but constantly want to switch games or something. Mm-hmm. So I think that the human impulse behind scrolling is going to exist no matter whether like you have access to a smartphone or a computer or whatever, or Reddit. So I've always thought that was like a little bit of a weird thing to critique, you know, where it is, I guess, enabling you to do the thing, but like your brain was gonna waste that time anyway on something, because usually you scroll when you are troubled, you know what I mean? Like you want to escape. And so like, is there a more productive way you could have done some escapism by like getting really immersed in a game or a movie or whatever? Yeah, maybe. But also maybe if you tried to do that, you would, like, there have been many times where I try to put on a TV show that I really enjoy, but I end up like texting through my own TV show because my brain is like, but what about, and I want to do something else, you know? So like my brain's going to do that no matter what. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of people, where we're like criticizing this thing as if it's the enemy, but it's really just like a hard thing's happening in your brain and it doesn't want to do a concentrate.
No, yeah. And that's, I find, you know what? That's kind of funny because I enjoy watching stuff at home. I enjoy binging and doing things like that. But it takes a lot, for some reason, for me to will myself into actually focusing on that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and that's why we like going to movie theaters.
Yes,
so
and I because it forces me to just everything goes black around outside this movie and nothing's happening. I turn out the phone, watch this, eat my big tub of popcorn, and this is what's happening. And I guess that's why I love going to like that or a theater or something like that. I have a question, actually. I know we're going so long on my how's it going, but I do have a question because this is very interesting to me that we found this out. So, do you do a lot of things that are just like free form, just where you just flow and just like go with something, or you do a lot of things that are kind of like laid out where it's like you have to follow something more? Does it make sense to you? Does that?
What is not really, I guess. I don't understand. I understand the laid out, but what is the freeform one?
Okay, got it. Music, right? Not that I don't know if you play music or anything like that, but if you were to play a song, if you were to play an instrument on a song, would you prefer the sheet music, knowing that you know how to read it and play the sheet music, or would you prefer to flow like jazz, where it's just go?
Okay, well, this is a terrible example because I can't play any instrument.
I just went with the one thing that came to my mind that made sense.
I just have to confess this because it's like blasphemy as a like high achieving Asian child.
Yeah,
that was the one. Like I did a ton of like science fair, math competition, spelling bee, like student government, and all of that stuff. But I never learned to play an instrument well.
Yeah, I really wanted.
My chest.
Yeah, I had to get out of my chest too. I really wanted to growing up to learn an instrument. It just never happened, and that's one of my biggest regrets. I didn't know how. I didn't learn how to play music. But
I feel really bad about it.
But an example, like a thing where you do something creative, and you just go right instead of just following something. Right? Have you done that? Because that's almost like the walking idea, where there's the idea of like just walking and just flowing like I do, where I just go and I just started like creating stuff and just making up stuff. I might seem a little weird, where I'm just like talking to myself or something like that, but that's what's going on right now. Do you do that? You've done writing, right?
Yeah.
Have you just flowed and just creatively written something? Just went, no idea, no nothing, just go.
I think the answer is yes and no. So sometimes, like in my daily life for regular tasks, it is difficult for me to do the to intentionally, like I can't really intentionally do the just flow thing. The just flow thing will happen with certain either creative projects or even sometimes stuff like cleaning or whatever. Like if it comes to me, which sounds like a dumb artist trope, but like sometimes a thing will come to me and I'll be like, I must do this. Like I've been stricken by the lightning bolt of inspiration and I must do this now and I'll do it freely, whatever. But it's not always like that. And I think there's a lot of, like when you're writing a screenplay, for example, you would like to believe that you can write a screenplay all in one, like, very intensive, like, period where you sit down and you look up and you don't realize what's happened and suddenly you've written a whole screenplay. But like a lot of the time it's not really like that. A lot of the time you have to sit down and make yourself do it and you're like, I don't want to do this. Why do I have to do this? This is terrible. But then, and there are periods where you get really into something, and so you're like super into a scene, and you like keep reworking it, and like it's come to you, and everything's flowing, and everything's great. But it's not always like that. And I think that for me, it's like a lot of it is probably governed by what's going on in my brain and my own brain chemicals. Where the reason that I thought. Because when I was in college, I was being evaluated for adult ADHD, which I think I've mentioned in the podcast before. But I never like got a diagnosis. They just kept reevaluating me all the time. And I did get put on medication that was supposed to treat both ADHD and OCD symptoms. But I kind of always thought, that's stupid. There's no way I could have ADHD because I am really good at concentrating sometimes. Like I have these periods where I'm concentrating so hard, like when normal people abuse Adderall and they like I had friends in college who would like intentionally take Adderall to finish a paper or whatever, even though they didn't have a diagnosis and were just like using the medication in a bad way. But but they'd concentrate really hard for a couple hours, whatever, and be super into it. And I always thought that because I could sometimes concentrate really hard, that meant I couldn't have ADHD. And then I found out that isn't true, that like hyper concentration is also a symptom of this. And so I think for me, like some of whether or not I can do freeform is like governed by this secret thing where I'm just doing a hyper concentration. Like it may not be that like some beautiful bird of artist's inspiration has come to me so much as that like my brain's doing a hyper concentrate, but whatever, like you can paint it any way you want, right? So I guess in the world's longest answer, the answer is both. But for my standard brain setup, doing something that you were talking about where you are just going for a walk and listening to music and then your brain kind of gets to like do a chill thing would not be enough inputs for me, and I'd be really stressed out. I think what we're talking about when we're talking about going to movies, like I have the same situation with yoga where like I can concentrate on doing yoga if I'm alone in my house. Like I'll just stop between every pose and try to do something else. But if I'm in this social pressure situation of a class where it would obviously be rude to take out your phone or to stop in between poses and like do other bullshit, that's enough that going to a yoga class for me is a very meditative experience because I'm doing something with my body and we have to stay there and we have to do the poses. And so then my brain can kind of zone out and like enjoy the thing, and I'll still think thoughts, but they're sort of really fleeting and it's like very relaxing. But it's not the same experience at home. At home it's like one part of me has to force myself to concentrate on the thing or else I'll just go start doing something else.
Okay. Thank you for answering my question.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm not doing yoga, but I had a pretty good week, I would say. I had some work successes, and so that always feels good. And things have been generally looking up, I guess, for me, which is always something that I kind of don't trust. But I think that it's always scary for me and to have things be going well. But this week was definitely a week where I kind of let myself feel like, okay, things are going well and that's good. We had a record day at the restaurant and I was really proud of everybody and proud to be a part of that. And I've been talking to my parents a lot, which always, I'm like very close to my parents, as I'm sure you guys can tell by how much I talk about them on the podcast. But you know, sometimes some days you'll have just like nothing conversations with people where you're just checking in. How are you? What did you do? Oh, you went to Costco, whatever. And other times you get to have more substantive conversations. So I've kind of been having more substantive conversations with my parents that makes me feel more connected to humanity, said an alien.
Okay.
And good conversations with friends and stuff like that. And that always kind of keeps me tethered where, like I've mentioned before, I'll kind of, if left alone, I'll start to believe that no one really likes me and that no one could possibly really like me because of my personality being terrible or something. And so I'll easily believe that nobody would be friends with me or that nobody would want to help me out or whatever. And so having good conversations with people where I'm clearly connecting with them, because a lot of times in adult friendships, you will just have that kind of conversation where you're like, hey, how was your day? Oh, it was good. A hard thing happened. Oh, I'm sorry that happened. End of conversation. And that's fine. And that's part of the fact that everybody's busy and everybody's working on their own stuff. And that's okay. Like, there's nothing bad about that. And those kinds of check-ins are still, like, valid and helpful and stuff like that. But at the same time, they don't do anything to like assuage my fears that secretly nobody wants to listen to what I'm saying. So it's always nice when you have those conversations where you're really connecting with people and you're like, oh, I actually do share some very core opinions with my friends and that must be why they like me, whatever. I mean, instead I should just work on the thing where I stop thinking that everyone secretly hates me. But in the meantime, it's nice. So things have been going pretty well. But like I said, it's that always makes me afraid. And this kind of gets us into our topic for the week.
Yeah.
That when things, I think because of my long history with depression, and that kind of comes with like, I don't really want to call them mood swings because they don't happen necessarily like in an instant, but just ups and downs of mentally and emotionally how your life is going. Because of such a long history with that, I'll tend to constantly be expecting things to go wrong again, both like at work and in my relationships, or you know, or just like how like I'll expect something to go wrong with my car for no reason, and kind of that thing where because bad stuff has happened, you sort of start to develop an eternal pessimism, a secret pessimism, that that things are always going to go wrong again, that you'll always fall back into depression again, that something will go wrong at work again, or something will go wrong in your relationship again, and so you'll end up alone, blah, blah, blah. Just a sort of eternal belief that the world is gray for you. And so I'm always really suspicious when things are going well that they're just going to turn on me. And then if they do, because like the world is full of ups and downs, and that's normal and fine, and stuff is not going to be easy all the time, and it's also not going to be hard all the time. But if you're looking for, like, if you're doing that confirmation bias thing where you're looking for things to go wrong, when they do go wrong, you're like, haha, see, of course this happened because bad stuff is going to happen to me because that's how dark my life is. And so that's kind of the topic for this episode is how like your experiences with depression or other mental health issues can kind of create this, I believe you phrased it as a glass half empty, kind of outlook.
Mentality,
and, you know, and unpacking that, and is there a way for me to unlearn that, because I think that's probably from, from talking to other people, probably a pretty common belief that you're like, okay, well, things are going to go bad for me all the time, and I'm just going to expect that. And how do we figure out where that came from and kind of unpack that? And is there a better way to deal with the challenges that will inevitably come that isn't just your confirmation bias of, oh, a challenge has happened, and of course it did because my life is bad? And is there a way to look at that and be like, a challenge has happened and I'm going to rise to the occasion and overcome it? And, you know, what is a healthy way to look at these things?
Yeah, so when you brought up this topic, I thought it was really good, because it's something that we commonly see in those of us who have, depression. And like for me, I'd like to think, Lord knows, I'd like to think that I am viewed the glass as half full, right? I'd like to think that I'm an optimist, but I know in my heart of hearts that I am a pessimist when it comes to my life. I know that for me, it really shows a lot, and I think my friends can probably tell this a lot, that it comes out in kind of my joking angst, as I call it.
Sure.
Where I'll just say something random that like is kind of just, oh, life is gonna be shit anyway, so whatever, type of thing. Like I'll go into like a really dark joke where I'll be like, all right, bye everybody, I'm gonna go home and sleep and hope I don't wake up, bye, and I'll walk away or something like that. And things will be where I'm always just in a mindset of like, man, things are okay right now, but when's that what's the metaphor here? When's the shoe gonna drop?
They're waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah, which I'd never understood what that meant. But okay, sure, yeah. That's the thing.
But it is that is really at the crux of what we're talking about, is that
one is
the eternal pessimism is always waiting for the other shoe to drop, where you're like, things couldn't possibly go well for me. So looking over my shoulder, like, where's the boogeyman?
Yeah, it's like living with a bomb that you don't know when it's set to go. You think maybe it's a storm, maybe it's not, but when's it gonna happen though? It's gonna happen. You think in your mind, it's like, oh, let's get rid of this, but you're gonna live with it anyways. It's weird. It's a thing that, like, it's almost like that we talked about before, where those of us in like these depressive states that we're in, we fall back into like these are kind of like blankets, or our beds of just like, I'm gonna stay comfortable in this dark room and just I don't want to do anything, and because life is always just gonna come and get me, and if I stay under these covers, maybe it won't get me, but I know it will. Because it's a blanket, it's not gonna protect me. I know that like right now, this blanket of happiness that I'm feeling is good right now, but when's that boogeyman gonna pop up and tear it off and like tear me a new one, because it happened before. And yeah, I want to believe, and I think this all comes down to just, the idea of like staying hopeful, trying to believe in something. Like it's almost trying to believe that things will get better, because if you start going on the road of like nothing will ever get better, then you never really enjoy anything, I think. And that's really hard for people like us.
And it takes away from your happiness if every happy thing that happens is tinged with fear. And for me, it's like a very literal fear. If things are going well, I will like genuinely feel afraid and or sometimes terrified about what bad thing is going to hit me next, or when the good thing is going to go away. And so you're ruining all your, like, then you're not even experiencing the happiness. Then you're just ruining your own happiness.
Yeah.
And so it's very understandable, but I also hate it about myself.
Yeah.
But I think, what you said earlier about trying to be positive, I think, especially with you, you clearly try to be positive a lot in a way that I think sometimes when you're a depressed person and you're still saying positive things, but you're also obviously a depressed person and sometimes feel bad, that people will say, oh, you're being fake, like you're being positive in a fake way. And I think that's that's like a dumb assessment, because being positive or being a pessimist or being an optimist is that's a choice. So there's no way to be fake about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a thing that it's an outlook that you're choosing to have. It's not something like, nobody's really born an optimist or a pessimist. I don't believe in that. I think that it's just a way that you're choosing to look at the world. It's a glass half empty or glass half full thing. And, no person is ever going to be purely optimistic or purely pessimistic. But I don't think there's anything fake at all. Like, I don't think it makes sense to assess an optimism or a pessimism as fake, because I think it's a way that you choose to frame the world, because we're all experiencing things through whatever lens we've chosen. And in the context of this conversation, the lens I've chosen is terrible. And it's not that I believe that the world is all bad and that all bad things are going to happen in the world all the time. Like, there is a lot of suffering and bad things happening in the world, and it feels like, especially now, and I don't know if that's true or not, but it feels like it. But I don't necessarily think that all things will return to badness in the outside world. It's just a lens that I use for my life because of, like, the terror that I may have gotten up this time, but I will fall down again for sure. Like, I'm wearing these really slippery shoes, and so there's no way that I'm gonna stay upright for the rest of my life. I'm just gonna fall down again for sure. And I think I've mentioned this in the podcast before that, you've talked about wanting to get out of, like away from depression and towards like a sustainable place, or a place that is good enough where it's not like you're never going to feel negative feelings, but like a manageable spot. And I've always kind of quietly believed that, like, I might be there right now. Like, I'm at a manageable spot right now compared to how I used to be during the Great Depression. But I've always believed that the Great Depression will come back for me, and that it'll for sure grab me again. But that's not necessarily a productive belief, because again, it's turned into this toxic thing where I'm constantly just waiting for it to come back for me, instead of maybe it will, maybe it won't. But, like, if I'm always thinking about it, I'm just filling my mind with more, like, horror than is necessary.
And I think that, and I know I do this to myself as well, because I know I could be doing things that necessarily won't, what's the word I'm looking for here? It won't necessarily, like, cure my pessimism or anything like that, as I'm saying. But I think that we've been in our depressive state for so long that it's almost like being exposed to some sort of the environment of, like, of just, like, this thing that is constant, right? That we do, right? And it becomes a norm, right? And for me, I want to try and break the norms, right? But it's very hard to do. It's very hard to break any type of thing that you believe is the norm, And you could look through history and things that people believed were the norms. Like, nowadays, sometimes those things weren't great, and those things could hurt people or hurt themselves and things like that. And sometimes people believed they were the right thing because it was the norm at the time for them. And I think that, like, when I've talked about, like, my break glass in case of emergencies, it's one of those things where my norm was to isolate myself, was to not listen, not pull myself out of the situation and just isolate myself from everyone else, leave myself to my own devices, and then spiral, right, really hard, right, because it was the norm. That's the norm in my mind, right? It was, growing up in certain households, that we have, like, especially for mine, like, you grow up and you're exposed to certain, like, beliefs and certain environments and certain words, especially, like, with my, I grew up in an Asian household, so it's all about, like, it's family, right, and things like that. And it was always about, believe in the family, but don't expose yourself to friends, right? Because if you have any type of friend is eventually at the end going to betray you, right? And that's the thing where it's like, I had to break that out of that mindset.
That's a very dark belief to have been given.
Yes, and it's a very like, and it's weird because it's almost in Asian cultures. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm over exaggerating, but like, over blanket statement here. I think that's the phrase. But it's they believe in keeping everything in the family, right? And if you expose yourself to anything outside what is their norm, right, then you're exposing the family and yourself to harm, right? That's why it's like, no, outsider are outsiders, and eventually they may seem okay now, but eventually they're gonna go, and eventually they're gonna betray you, and you're gonna get hurt.
That's gonna give you mad trust issues.
Yeah, there's that too. And it's
oh my god.
It's a good one. And so growing up in like that mindset for a while really hurts you, like eventually just like, when's the shoe gonna drop, like you said. Yeah. And for me, I've been trying recently to break out of those molds, right? And so that's where I landed in a spot where I'm in now, where I have these wonderful people I'm surrounded by, these people that I know are good, and there's good out there. And there's also things of like, for me, where I'm trying to break the norm of like, I may not be able to believe in optimism in myself, but I can try and believe that the world can be better if I just continue to try to put something good into the world, right? And so, I mean, that's kind of the basis of this podcast here, trying to throw goodness into the world, and hopefully that light that's thrown into the world like kind of like shines to someone else, eventually. And hopefully that makes me believe that like, okay, things can be going into a place where I can start believing that, okay, maybe there's a cup and it can be half empty and half full, but at least I have a cup.
I think you've done an amazing job unlearning that particular belief about friends, though, because at this point in your life you obviously have such a like rich idea of like chosen family and reaching out to friends and having people that know your, I don't want to call them weaknesses, but like that know your shit, you know what I mean? Yeah. And that doesn't mean that in every, we've seen recently, it doesn't mean that in every moment you're going to easily ask for help when you need it, because we're all human, and so you won't do that sometimes, whether it's friends or family or whatever. That's a very human reaction, is to accidentally not ask for help when we need it or when we should be asking for it. But like, I think you've actually done an incredible job like overcoming those particular, because like to be told that people will turn against you, so I think a lot of people have trust issues like that, and so do I, but I made them up myself. I wasn't like explicitly told, hey, you should have trust issues about friends, and that's gotta be terrible. And I think you've done an amazing job like unlearning that and being able to, in general, in most circumstances, like surround yourself with chosen family. And so that's awesome, and that gives me hope.
Yeah,
I guess for myself and for all of us.
One of the things I do, and again, I do again, friends know me, sometimes I do the dark jokes here and there, and one of the things I do, and I don't think he actually knows why I do it. I think he thinks I just do it at random, but one of my friends, I'll go up to him and I was like, hey, what's up? And I'll give him a big hug and everything like that. We'll get in a hug, and I'll whisper in his ear, one day I'm going to betray you. I don't think he doesn't know why I do it. And I think it's just a joke. And in my mind, it is a joke, but it's a joke on like my own personal thing that happened, where it was like, I've been hurt more by family than I have of like friends and things like that. And I've had so much support from like this chosen family, I guess, if you like you put it there. And it's been great to do that, and like that right there, instilling that and changing that like outlook has pushed me into like where I stated, where it's like I'm trying to break my norm, right, which is no longer falling back into certain things, trusting more, but like at the same time, yes, I still have that idea of like, I'm under the covers. When's that boogeyman gonna pop up? When am I going to spiral again? When's it gonna come back? Because I think it's gonna come back, because I know it's gonna come back, because it's happened before. And I want to believe that like the things I do right now to try and stem that. Like, I could look over my shoulder for the rest of my life, right? And keep looking over it and like worry about it and stress out over it and create my own like mental stressor and kind of like put myself in a dark place. Or I could try to change the way I look at it, you know? Like, maybe I can't change my idea of like, oh, there's something that's coming, right? Maybe I can't change that, but maybe I can live a little bit better while at the same time looking over my shoulder. You know, maybe I can have this ideal like utopia in my mind where it's like, I know something's coming, but I'm going to enjoy my time right now while I'm not being grabbed by this monster right now.
Well, I
so
mean, in a way,
type
yeah,
of situation, you know what I mean?
We obviously all, we're all gonna die. Is one of my favorite things to say. No, but
dark pessimism jokes, right? High five. Give me that. Look at that.
But we're all gonna die, and yet we still agree to like fall in love with people, and like sometimes you like get married and you think that you're going to be together, and you might or you might not.
No.
Sometimes people get divorced. That's a thing that happens. But like people still, or like even if you don't, you like partner with someone and one of you's going to die first, even if you never fall out of love and are with each other for what is to you forever. One of you is going to die first, like people still agree to have pets, even though your dog is probably going to die before you. Yeah. So like there must be a way to be like, yes, something sad is gonna happen because life is not just a series of 100,000 good things happening to you over and over again. That's just not how it works. No. There are challenges, but like there's got to be a way to still agree to play the game and have hope about playing the game, without letting your fear of bad things overcome you and all good things. No. And I think, it's not the case that I would say don't have if in case of depression, break glass plan. Like, I'm not saying never plan for depression again. I guess that wouldn't be my ideal solution to this. Mm-hmm. But there has to be some way to also not do the thing that I'm doing, where every good thing that happens, I assume, is some sort of trick. And I assume that any good thing that happens means a bad thing is about to happen. I used to, when I was a child, believe the opposite, where whenever anything bad happened, I told myself it was because something good was going to come later, and it was like a balance thing, which is a weird belief for a child to have, I guess. I was like very little and I believed this. I'd be, if something bad was happening, I'd be like, well, this is because something good is going to happen to me later. And like that's also probably not how it works, because it's not like an equal 50-50 balance.
Yeah,
of like
certain beliefs like that.
This for this, but I really had that belief very strongly when I was a child, where I was like, if bad thing happens, it mean good thing also can happen. Mm-hmm. But the realistic thing is that both bad things and good things are going to happen to you. But like, how do we allow ourselves to enjoy the good things and not assume that they mean something bad is around the corner? Yeah. But with regards to your dark jokes and stuff, I don't take those as a sign of pessimism, and I feel much more comfortable around people who both make dark jokes and can take dark jokes. Mm-hmm. Because that's one of the most fun parts of living in Yikesland to me, is that we have access to a whole bunch of other jokes that other people either can't make or like wouldn't think are funny. Yeah. Like have I told the one about I wish I had thought to kill myself before? I don't think so.
I'm not remembering it, but go ahead.
My sister and I, one time I was on a bus, and the bus was taking too long. Like, there were a bunch of delays. It wasn't that bad, basically, is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. But I had texted my sister, like, it was like a mega bus or something, and we were stuck on the bus for a long time. Like, the bus broke down, there was traffic, classic mega bus experience, mm-hmm. but it really wasn't that bad. And I texted my sister, I wish I had thought to kill myself before I got on this bus. And that is one of my favorite depression jokes ever, because Because while, like, obviously as a person who has had many suicidal thoughts before and, like, been in a real bad place, the ability to make light of that is, like, very important to me.
Yeah.
And I understand that not everybody wants to make jokes about suicide, and that is absolutely
Yeah,
fine.
that's okay.
It's
And
not
we
for
understand,
everybody.
you know.
But, like, but it helps me be alive for sure.
Yeah.
Because to say that about just the small setback of a bus ride taking too long is, like, so absurd to me, you know? Like, it's no, not to do that thing where you break down a joke so much that it's not funny anymore, but, like, the bus wasn't that bad, and a quote-unquote normal person would never be in the suffering of that bus ride and think to themselves, being dead would be better than this. Like, that's not a normal okay thought to have or whatever, but that is a thing that somebody who has been through the things and thought the things and felt the things that I have would genuinely think. And then immediately they would realize that's a ridiculous thing. I'm obviously going to get off this bus and everything's going to be pretty okay after.
Yeah, one of my since we're telling favorite depression jokes, one of my favorite depression jokes to do is someone, like a friend of mine, will walk up to me and they were like, "Hey, how was your day?" I was like, "Oh, it's not too bad at all." And I'll have like the little chit chat, and I was like, "Oh, all right, I'm gonna go home and learn to tie a rope." And, I don't know why. I thought it's just in my mind. It's hilarious because I'll start it all off with, "Yeah, everything was fine, nothing happened, it was all good," and yeah, okay, all right, I'm gonna go home and learn to tie a rope, and that's it. Where I think there was, I don't know why, but I think it's in my mind hilarious, but that's.
Well, but I think that again has to do with the absurdity of, like, how you know that at any moment your mind might turn on you and that things might be fine, but then your brain's like, no, here's the thing, everything's bad. And so it makes light of the absurdity of what, like, you know, and that's kind of what Yikesland is all about. It's like the word Yikesland is also ridiculous, and it's kind of a reflection of how absurd it is to live in this world where sometimes your brain's going to do bads to you, and you know, you can try to control it, but you're never fully going to be able to control it. And so I love jokes like that, and they make me feel less alone, you know, to know that there's other people that think that stuff is funny because we have to, because there's no way to survive it for me without being able to make light of it and being able to think that, like, that stuff is it's hilarious because it's a survival mechanism, you know? Like, I would not have made it this far if I wasn't able to use humor in coping with this stuff.
Yeah, humor is a big coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And that could be its own topic for its own episode.
Yeah.
But yeah,
but I definitely know people who have been through similar stuff to me and also, you know, come very close to suicide and who think that joking about suicide is, like, not fucking funny at all, you know, and that is a perfectly valid reaction, but it's not the reaction I have. And so I feel much safer and more comfortable and more heard and understood when I'm around other people who also think that making jokes about suicide is okay in, like, the right company. I'd probably be insulted if someone who was perfectly happy thought suicide was funny, and I'd be like, "What the fuck,
and again,
man?"
Like, and again, we know that if there's some of you out there who don't think it's funny, we understand, and that's okay, and that's completely fine. And for some reason, like, we're humor, and especially for me, I think my biggest belief when it comes to humor, especially, is that it's all funny or none of it is type of situation. That's my belief in my mind, and so that also allows me to just joke about that as well. And so, but we understand, and again, we're not trying to offend anybody. It's just how we cope with it, you know, and not how we deal with our own.
Yeah, I think it's just as valid to think that that's not funny as it is to think that it's funny.
Yeah,
it's however you react to it is okay, and whatever it is that you need to do or think is funny or not funny in order for you to live is perfectly fine. It just so happens that because I have this reaction, I really like being around other people with the same reaction. And I think, you know, obviously it can be upsetting if you don't think that stuff is funny and, like, you're with a friend or somebody else who like has had similar experiences to you, but they do think that's funny. And so I fully get that, but I also like I treasure so much my friends and family who do feel the same way that I do about jokes and about depression and stuff like that, because that is for sure like one of the core way that, and like buying small bags of Cheetos are two of the ways that I have even stayed alive this long. So, you know, it's fine. Buy the Cheetos or don't buy the Cheetos, whatever works for you. But I like being around people who also want to buy the Cheetos.
Yeah, I buy Cheetos. Well, any final thoughts?
But yeah, I think, you know, in a way, some episodes we kind of wrap up and we're like, this is the answer to this. And like, there's not necessarily one single answer to everything, but for this topic, I guess, feels a little bit still open to me, because I feel better knowing that there's some things like the being told that friends are the enemy in a way, or friends are a scary thing. Seeing that you have largely overcome that or unlearned it is inspirational to me and makes me feel like, okay, maybe there's hope for me. But at the same time, I don't know clearly what that path looks like yet, to unlearning whatever waiting for the other shoe to drop thing is happening to me. I don't know what sort of balance I should be taking in terms of, you know, be prepared that you might get sad again and have some break glass in case of, ready for that, you know, and have also sympathy for yourself if you'd get sad again, rather than like hating yourself because you got sad again. I don't know how to balance that with, you know, just that agreeing to have a dog even though the dog will die before you.
Yeah.
I don't know what that balance looks like and what that path looks like for me personally. And so in a way it's still kind of an open topic to me.
Yeah, it's about choosing, I guess if we're going with this metaphor, I guess it's about choosing the dog that you want to live with. You know, it's whether or not you know this dog is not going to last all the way. This is so dark. It's a dark metaphor. You know the dog is going to go away, you know, and it doesn't live as long as you, and you wish it would, but you know that eventually that's going to end in something, you know, eventually there's a dark end, right? And you believe that that's going to happen one of these days, right? But then it's the idea, and it's the difference between you're walking through your house and you see the dog, and it's whether or not you go up to it and you're, you know, being with it and you're bonding with it and you're loving it and you're doing all this while you can, or walking by and it's like, hey, dead dog, and you just keep walking by, you know, because there's the difference between those two things of whether or not you're going to want to, you know, enjoy it while it lasts, I guess, and at the same time while that comes to an end, it, you know, and things may drop, you know. Yeah, there are ups and downs. Yeah.
Well, because it's unrealistic to believe that nothing bad will ever happen.
Exactly.
Yet. But at the same time, I don't know that it's realistic for me to constantly be waiting to fall into a depression as bad as the Great Depression again. Yeah. You know, and it might happen. I don't know. I don't
exactly.
know.
And you don't know. You don't know.
But like,
you know,
the funny thing is I was good at that with dogs, because I had a very old dog that I had adopted when he was old, just to do like a hospice, like a fun hospice situation. And that was fine. Like, falling in love with a dog that I thought would only be alive for like a couple of months, although he ended up living for a couple of years, and knowing how heartbroken I would be when he died was fine with me. I was like, this is fine. Like, when it comes to dogs, I am fine and wise and well adjusted, and am willing to like just throw my love into the ether, and that's good enough, and like, let's spend the days together that we can. But when it comes to humans, or just even the concept of things in my life going well, I'm like, no, I'm not going to enjoy it while I have it.
Yeah.
I'd like to fear it instead.
Yeah, it's really kind of like a question of like, can we learn to love our life while it's good? Because even though we know that eventually there's going to be a down, And if we can do that, then when it does go down, and the shoe does drop, we can look at it, and even though it's bad, we can make it to next Tuesday and everything like that, because we know that we did love our life at one point and we can again because we already did it. And so it's a question of whether or not we can, and that's the complexities of the glass half empty. So take us home.
Well, thank you for being here with us today. This has definitely been a very personal topic, I think,
Yeah.
for us. And so hopefully you guys have something to relate. Maybe you have solved this already and you can just tell us how we should look at it. But let us know your thoughts on Twitter or Facebook. You can find us on Instagram at Yikesland_podcast, or write us a long love or hate letter at yikesland@gmail.com. We did talk about some dark stuff today. If you guys need help and you are looking for a resource, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is completely confidential, 24/7, toll-free, and that is a really good resource. Remember, you are not alone. That's going to be 1-800-273-8255. Obviously, we are comfortable making jokes about suicide, but that doesn't mean that you have to be. And if that's something that bothers you, obviously you have every right to stay away from that and to believe that you don't want to be around those jokes being made. So we completely understand. But if that has you, feeling like you need to talk to somebody, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is a great resource. And obviously we completely understand if us making those kinds of jokes on the podcast means that it's not okay for you to watch the podcast. It's how we cope. I know it's how a lot of people cope, but it doesn't have to be how everybody copes. So we appreciate you guys, regardless of your reaction to that. We're happy that you make it to next Tuesday, whether you are or aren't here listening to us or watching us. We just want you here in the world with us.
That's right. Because it would make it, you being in the world makes it so much brighter. And being here on the Yikesland with us, we are together and knowing that you're not alone. So thank you so much for joining us here. This has been one of your hosts, Jelani Hoon, along with host
Chris Fung.
And hopefully you guys enjoy your views from Yikesland.
Thanks for being here, guys.